Mayor, I believe we're ready.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The January 12, 2021 council meeting, all present. Okay, we're amending the agenda.
Yes, sir. I make a motion. My apologies. I make a motion to amend the agenda to include the tax administration's request for a refund or a credit of overpaid taxes under a consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Okay, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comments. Everybody's got the public comments in front of them. Okay, I need a motion for the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda approved. Okay, sale of town property. I need a motion. Was this, I have a question for Steve, was this a tax lien?
No, sir.
I believe originally we had sold it for taxes. There were no bidders, and then we subsequently advertised it on govdeals.com, and you have then received this high bid through the GovDeals process. At the tax foreclosure, we did not receive any bids when it was initially sold.
How long ago was that, do you know, off the top of your head?
No, I don't recall off the top of my head, sir.
Okay, all right. I need a motion to accept the bid of $10,800 on the property of 408 Pinnacle Ridge Road.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, tax refund, output for tax documents. I need a motion to accept. I don't know if we want to give it to them at this time.
Either refund or credit for this coming year.
How about we do a check dated next year?
Say it again. I didn't hear.
Yeah.
No.
I need a motion to approve.
Really old tricks.
So I make a motion to,
For the tax credit, tax refund.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to make a motion.
I was gonna say, you may not be able to. I'll make a motion to give the tax credit
Okay,
to the following people for the,
I need to accept, approve.
Yeah, I just got a question. Why isn't there on all these, it's got, no, some of them have a dollar amount, some of them don't. Why is that?
I think the dollar amount.
What's the tax credit if they don't have a dollar
the
amount?
first one doesn't, does it?
There's two of them here that don't,
You're right.
so there's
Jeffrey Kirkland,
5 that do and 2 that don't.
do we have a question on that one? Steve?
I only got 3.
We've got,
Got some on the back.
All right, what we're asking for, Mayor, is the tax relief for Jeffrey Kirkland.
but there's no amount.
It's $51.24.
Go down at the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Apologies.
Somehow we must
I got
have had
it.
a copier error.
I got it.
398,
Oh, gotcha.
Never mind,
Okay.
never mind, we're good.
All right, we're
Okay.
good.
That's what we're asking for, Mayor.
I got it.
And Goldman is $1,886.80. Okay, so I need a motion?
I'll make a motion to refund or credit,
Tax refund?
tax refunds for these 3
Okay.
residents.
It's just 3, right?
1, 2,
Yeah, just 3.
3, yes.
Make sure I'm not missing.
Swagger?
Okay.
Okay, motion passed. Okay, new business. Audit and financial statement presentation.
Mayor, I'd like to introduce Cindy Randolph, CPA. She is the town's auditor this year. She's audited the town's finances through June 30, 2020, and we put her summary in your packet. We also hand-delivered a copy of the audit to you over the weekend, and she is here today to present the audit and answer any questions you might have. Yes, please.
Do you care if I pull this, or do I need to leave
No,
this?
that's fine. You can take it down.
Just pull it, okay. That way you can better understand. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to do the audit for Beach Mountain, I'm sorry. Steve and his staff did a very well job getting all the information together that I needed. He was very easy to work with. The staff was very easy to work with. We had a good time when we came up, and I appreciate Steve giving us all the help that he could. Okay, so everybody's got a hard copy of the audit. This has been submitted to the Local Government Commission. Of course, the Local Government Commission with COVID is not, they're working remotely still. As far as I know, I got an email just yesterday from the Local Government Commission saying that the financials had been reviewed. We don't get anything anymore that says they've been approved. They said they have been reviewed and the invoices could be processed for payment. And as far as I know, so I'm assuming, because I called them last week and said, we've got a board meeting Tuesday, I need to know if you guys have looked at this. Didn't hear a word back, but I did get the email and I've got it printed there in the work papers back at the office. So I'm assuming this has been approved by the Local Government Commission. That's why we went ahead and decided to go ahead and put this together. I did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the normal type of an opinion you'd want in an audit of the financials. This was considered a yellow book report, which means that you received state funding greater than $100,000. So as part of that, I had to do a little bit of some testing on the state funds. I had no compliance issues. I had no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, either in the compliance part of it or with internal controls, which is very good. Now, I think in your packet you also had this, I did this financial highlights page. This is what we'll look at. Please let me know if you have questions. These are big numbers, but it's more detailed. This is a very extensive audit here with all the capital projects that we added this year.
I don't know if you have a copy of that.
Should be in your council packet. Are you talking about the book?
Well, let's see.
Mayor, if you turn to 6.1, page 12 and 13.
Got it.
That's
The financial highlights.
That's what she's referring to. Okay.
I'm going to go through those, and like I say, if you have questions, stop me, or we can wait till the end. The town had a great year considering COVID hit in March. So, very, very good year through June 30th, 2020. If you'll do what?
No, keep going.
Okay. So if you'll look at the financial highlights. You want me to keep going? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just,
General fund for 2020, cash and investments, which includes your restricted cash, $7,702,917.
Those would like you to unmute your microphone.
Can-
Press star 6 to unmute.
we had somebody mute us. Okay.
Compared to $8,111,894. Total assets for 2020 in the general fund, $8,686,111. Fund balance for the general fund, $8,136,845 compared to $8,221,878. Your total revenues increased in the general fund, $7,130,331. Total expenditures for the general fund, $7,235,482. And a lot of that increase in that expenditure was capital outlay.
I have a question on the total revenues with the increase of the $411,000. What made that number? What was the bulk? Was there any large percentage of something that made that number?
I have to say it's probably sales tax, but I can get you an answer to that later. I couldn't answer that.
That's okay.
I can tell you, hold harmless, the hold harmless of 278,000, I'll show you real quick, if you want to flip to page 55 in your big audit report, this gives you your actual for 2020 compared to 2019. Then you had an NCDOT grant of $287,214. CARES money for 2020 was new of $28,208. I think that is mainly the increase.
So the sales tax was actually down in 2020 versus 19.
It was.
It's up, not down.
No,
And the
it's
franchise
down a
tax
couple
was
hundred
down a
dollars.
little, but then
It's
you,
down 200,000.
Yeah.
Taxes and license,
you received the hold harmless money.
10,000.
Councilman, we received sales tax in arrears several months,
Right,
and remember, this report goes through June 30,
correct.
and with COVID, the sales tax across the board was reduced, but it's been increasing ever since, but sales tax is received in the arrears several months. Correct, Steve?
And then if you look down at your restricted intergovernmental revenues, CARES Act, of course, 28,000, but then you had the NCDOT grant, which raised that revenue, 287,000 compared to 42,000.
The CARES Act was anything we bought COVID related, we got reimbursed.
Yes, that was through June 30. We've had additional CARES funds, which will
The
be,
fogger and
yeah, will
stuff.
be shown in
Okay.
the next
Cool.
financials.
Yes, sir.
And then the DOT grant was for the side path, the streetscape.
Yeah,
Right,
streetscape,
streetscape.
yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, back to the financial highlights. So the change in fund balance, which was a decrease for 2020, $85,033. Your unassigned fund balance as a percent of general fund expenditures, 78.8% compared to 48.1% in 19. And then your current levy collection percentage was fairly the same, little bit elevated in 2020.
Can you explain what that means?
It means collecting your property taxes. If you look at page
We collected 98%.
98%, if you look on page 73 of the big report,
Right,
this is analysis of your current tax levy.
okay.
So this includes, that 98% includes motor vehicle and property. So what, out of the levy, you collected 98% of it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman, we budget 96% collection, and I'll clarify, this is 98.8. That's almost 99. That's really good.
That's
I was
great.
gonna say, what is the state average, if you know off the cuff?
Not, do you know it, Steve?
Well, I don't know exactly. 2 years ago, it was 94.
94.
Wow.
Yeah, so that just
Size.
speaks volume.
So I think it's important to know, we budget for 96%, we
Sure.
collected almost 99. So an excellent job by our tax collection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On the various towns and counties that I audit, this is one of the highest I've seen. I've even, some of mine have been down in the 80 percentile. So that's good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, back to the financial highlights, the capital project fund, the public works facility, it was new for 2020. So you'll see no numbers for 2019, and that's an ongoing capital project until it's complete. Cash and investments which includes your restricted cash, $2,633,167. Total assets, $2,633,167. Fund balance, $2,628,844. Total revenues, $82, which I think was interest earnings. It's all in the detail of this big report. Total expenditures so far for that capital project, $751,238. Then your other financing sources, $3,380,000. That's the loan from BB&T. And you have to remember on this capital project, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, it was split between, I think the council decided to split so much percent to general fund, so much percent to water and sewer, and so much to sanitation. And I don't remember the percentages right off, but most of it was in the general fund, which gave you a change in fund balance, $2,628,844. Second page, emergency telephone system. Cash and investments, $126,410. Total assets, $131,846. Fund balance, $131,014. Total revenues increased, $71,242. Expenditures actually went down from 2019, so there must have been something that you spent in 2019 on the emergency telephone system for the expenditures. For 2020, we have $53,487.
Well, the 2019 expenditures, would that have been dispatch with all the new?
We upgraded all the dispatch
The
furniture,
windows
the
and
control stations.
yeah,
It
that's
was a
what I
major
thought.
improvement.
The security as well?
Yeah, in 19.
Right.
Okay.
So it gave you a change in fund balance of $17,755 in the emergency telephone system. Water and sewer fund, cash and investments, $2,057,993. Total assets, $16,897,885. Your net position, $10,760,021. Total revenues increased, $2,474,880. Your total expenditures actually went down a little. You can see that decrease. But the total expenditures for 2020, $2,240,359. And then I'll skip on down to the very end there. Change in net position in the water and sewer fund, $527,058. And most of that being, if you can see up above there, the capital contributions, that's the capital contributions from the capital projects that were the water and sewer capital projects. The sanitation fund, cash and investments, $898,604 compared to $343,328. Total assets, $1,330,995 compared to $672,509.
Let me go back to the cash and investments. When you go from 898, it was 898 in 2020 and 343. What?
For the sanitation fund, Steve, let me go back in here a second.
What was that number comprised of?
Why the cash went up in the sanitation fund?
I'm not sure right now.
Okay, thank you.
Well, those dollars, Councilman, come from the monthly sanitation fee specifically addressed to this. And we had some operational reductions. This is again in 2019. We did not increase our rates until July of 2020. So we can pull those specifics and get an answer to you.
Okay, then on the sanitation fund, total revenues, $522,171. Total expenditures, $493,159, which brought you down to a change in net position for the sanitation fund of $33,769, compared to a decrease in it in 19 of $12,328.
Ms. Cindy, would you explain the non-operating revenues and expenditures to me?
Non-operating revenues and expenditures, that is investment earnings, which would be like your interest or dividend income, depending on sale of capital assets, then any type of miscellaneous income or interest expense.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
And like I say, like if you want to go back into the audit report, that's all on page 22 that gives the details of all the non-operating revenues and expenses.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman, when we sell surplus equipment on gov deals, for instance, it goes in that line item.
Okay.
Right.
I can check specifically, but I do recall in 19, we did dispose of some sanitation equipment on gov deals. We kind of cleaned house,
Yeah.
and that would be accounted for in that line item.
We also sold
Dump
cars-
truck.
Some cars.
I understand this is for
Yeah,
sanitation.
this is, that would be in
but where
general
would
fund.
police cars?
Yeah, these would be garbage and sanitation
Anything
equipment.
related, okay.
Yes. Any asset that was in the sanitation fund that we disposed of through auction would be reflected in this number here.
Yes, sir.
And of course, we had no stewardship or compliance issue about excess of expenditures over appropriations. So you stayed within the budget for expenditures, which is good.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Mayor, we're going to have a discussion next about long-term debt for the town with Mr. Cheatwood. The audit does have an explanation of long-term debt, I think starting on page 46.
Yeah, I saw that.
It'd be great if you had any questions on debt for the auditor before we move on to Mr. Cheatwood. And I don't know, Cindy, if you've got anything you want to share with us about our debt ratio. You indicated that we have a legal debt ceiling of about $34 million.
That's what I was going to look at that. 34,406,653, the legal debt margin.
And that's figured on, I believe it's 8%.
It is
of
8%.
the ad valorem value of the town for that 2020.
If you-
8%?
8%. If you flip on page 10 of your big audit, it says North Carolina down at the very bottom. That again gives you a more detail of your, you can see, I mean, it doesn't give you the detail, but it just kind of gives you a summary of the debt there. But at North Carolina General Statutes limits the amount of general obligation debt that a unit of government can issue to 8% of the total assessed value of taxable property.
And what percent are we?
Well below 8%, I don't know.
Yeah.
I calculated that, but I can get back with you.
So when does the state start getting a little antsy whenever when they see that number rising? Or,
I would think they wouldn't get anything until you're like right at, or going above the 8%.
Plus, they've approved
They have.
98%.
Right.
But we don't know the exact percentage.
I was just curious, I mean, it's not
No,
It's not it's irrelevant, I just,
Well,
I think it's important.
I think the point is that we have a debt ceiling of about $34.5 million. And in the general fund, we've got about $4.7 million in debt, long-term debt.
right,
But we're talking about a $20 million possible project.
Right.
So I think it's important that before we go on from the audit, that we all understand where our debt stands today and what the future may bring, so that we can better understand where we want to go in the future, if that makes sense.
And this kind of goes into why I was asking this, because this time last year, you know, we had the LGC that was breathing down their neck. Things weren't going too well. And I mean, this is a compliment to everyone that's got their hands involved in this. And our previous audit was, you know, maybe 6 pages, 7 pages at best. This audit here is 76 pages. I think you've done an outstanding job with the numbers. And, you know, what got my attention was that, you know, there was explanation of the deficiencies, and then your comment that during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in our internal control that we considered to be material weaknesses. And then on your last page, where it's got financial statement findings, none. I think it's a job well done by everyone and all the staff and folks that were involved in this.
Well, Councilman, thank you. There isn't a whole room full of staff. We have one financial officer, Steve Smith, who's responsible for that. And he doesn't have a back room of accountants. So,
Okay.
But
Steve,
they all
I just-
came together, the other people all came together when we had 50 invoices to pull, and Steve pulled in other staff to help get things pulled for us.
Sorry, Steve, I'll make that singular. I'd like to thank Steve Smith. Bob Pudney had nothing to do with this, or, okay.
But understand that Rebecca collected the 98.8% taxes, and Kelsey Wise handles our accounts payable. So, you know, they pulled in with the auditor and Steve to put this together, but I know you know this, but I want the public to know, we don't have a huge accounting financial office, and we don't have a staff of accountants. We've got Steve Smith, Rebecca collecting taxes, and Kelsey Wise handling the accounts receivables and payments. So, you know,
And these are large numbers.
I've reviewed this myself, and I'm impressed.
That tells me, or that tells us that they absolutely know what they're doing, and they do it very well.
Thank you very much. I'll take a full back room though.
Steve did a very good job,
We
though.
can give you a back room, it doesn't mean anybody's gonna be
Yeah.
here.
Back room, yeah.
You know, we were considering hiring 2 staff members for you, but since you did all this, we don't need to now.
Shoot myself in the foot.
Being a first-year audit, it's always hard walking into something and you're not familiar with all the funds you have, all the projects going on, and Steve was very good to sit down and talk to, explain to us this, so it'll be a whole lot easier, at least on our part. I don't know how easy it'll be for Steve pulling all those invoices, but on our part, next year.
As far as looking at our long-term debt and our cash flow, do you see any concerns going down the road?
I don't. Now, tell me what you're wanting.
You don't know what projects we have in the works?
Well, now, I know the ones just through June 30th, 2020, what's going on. Are there any new ones?
No, no, not really. We just got the Public Works building, but that's, most of it has been 2020.
Well, it'll be, most of the Public Works building will be in the next financial
It'll
statement.
be next year.
But our auditor is well versed in that project. She's looked at the loan. She hasn't seen the expenditures through July 1st, but she understands the loan.
Yeah, I saw 700 and some odd thousand.
I think some of the, you know, we have, as we've discussed, some infrastructure projects that we're working on now to bring to you. We've of course got the water and sewer, Watauga River intake that we're gonna bring to you. That's the big one.
Is Miss Cindy familiar with that, what that entails?
I don't believe so. We didn't share the Watauga River future project with the auditor.
And then we've got pipe replacements.
We've got 2 that are in planning stages.
That's about $3 million apiece.
Each. Yes, sir.
That's every 2 years.
unless you want to speed it up.
Well, I'd like to speed it up, that's beside the point.
Well, and I think exactly, that's what I'm trying to allude to. As we move from the audit presentation and we go to Mr. Cheatwood's presentation, those are where we're bringing all those projects together.
Okay.
So that you can manipulate those to figure out how far we want to go, at what speed, and what our debt is going to be, and more importantly for me, how are we going to finance it, how are we going to pay for it, so.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
No, but it's good to have this before the next
course.
presentation.
Yeah, no questions. We have to approve the audit.
The only objection I have to approving the audit is I just received this yesterday at 1 PM. So barely got to crack open it. If it's just formality, I'll pass it, but if it's not, I'd like to.
I don't think you have to pass it.
Okay.
I think we should,
Just want
it's
to
on, it's in the agenda, we've discussed it, it's been presented. Certainly, I'd like to maybe put it on the agenda in February, consent.
Oh, sure.
And if there's no issues, we can formalize it and pass it. Would that be acceptable?
Okay, sounds
Yes.
good.
We'll do that.
Give us a chance to really look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And like I say, Steve has my number, and I think Bob does too, so if anybody has questions, please feel free to call the
Yes, ma'am.
office, email, and I'll have my work papers there so we can explain. That you'll check on that cash for the, was it sanitation?
I'll follow up with you, Steve,
Yeah.
on that. It's
Yeah.
no big deal.
And I'd like to get that percentage of
I
our
will.
legal debt.
I'll get that to you first thing in the morning.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very
Thank-
much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Excellent,
Thank
excellent,
you.
Audit. We appreciate that.
Okay, now we have the financial advisor, David Cheatwood.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to introduce First Tryon and David Cheatwood, and I've put some notes together because although I've discussed this with you in my reports, I'd like to give you a little background on how we got to where we are today and what I'm trying to accomplish. As you know, we're planning the Watauga River intake or some mechanism to improve our water, and we've talked about that at being somewhere in the range of $20 million. In addition, as the mayor pointed out, we've got several infrastructure projects that run between $2 and $3 million each that are on the horizon. And I'm concerned myself because I don't have that financial expertise to lead the town in the best way forward on how to decide, number one, how to finance these or at what level to finance these, what is the best method to finance these projects. And more importantly, I looked at the existing debt of the town, which you've now seen in the audit, and this goes out several tens of years depending on which project it is. And as we go forward with this major infrastructure projects and funding, I'm concerned, and I was not comfortable with recommending to you how to fund these projects or what projects to do in what order depending on the finances. So sat down with Mr. Smith. We spent quite a bit of time looking at it. He called the league. The league did not have people that could do this for us. They did have recommendations. And in fact, First Tryon was their number one recommendation. We also contacted a number of towns in Watauga and Avery County that had recently done a water improvement project like Boone did with the river. And Blowing Rock just did a major general obligation bond. And this is the firm that they used. So we contracted with First Tryon to do a specific deliverable. It's not an open-ended contract. In fact, the deliverable is here. We have it. And their job was we asked them to develop us a model where we could input all of the projects, all of the where, what ifs, and we could turn them on, turn them off, and do those scenarios so that when I sit here before you and say, or at the budget retreat, and you say, well, we'd like $5 million worth of water projects in the next 2 years, we can input that in the model. We can look at what the debt is, and we can understand what that does to the customer's rates. Now, we do have a very good water model. You had that presented to you 2 months ago by Mr. Del Shepherd from McGill and Associates. And that model is a good model, but it deals specifically with our water. It does not deal with our total debt from the town. And the difference between McGill's model and the model we have purchased, custom model from First Tryon, is that we own this one. Steve can sit down, you can tell us, give us direction, and we can manipulate the model, plug in, turn on, turn off, do whatever we need to do. On the McGill model, every variable that we want to change is an additional charge. We don't have access to the model. We don't own the model. So they're very willing to do what we want them to do, but that is a reoccurring cost, and it only deals with the utilities.
Chief?
Yes.
When you're talking about when the town owns the model, I mean, give me an example on how you would fine tune something and fine tune the model.
Okay. If you, if in the budget retreat you say to me, we'd like to pave X amount of roads next year at this amount, we'll be able to plug that project into this model immediately and be able to give you the outputs, which Mr. Cheatwood's going to show you how it works globally. And we'll be able to take a look at that and see, are we going to fund it with cash? Are we going to fund it with debt? Are we going to do a combination of cash and debt? That's a simple scenario. Same thing if we need to do a water project, or if we need to build a bathroom, or if we need to build a public works facility, whatever it's going to be. So that we own the model, we can do that in-house almost immediately on the fly. The water model that we have through McGill, if we want to add 12,000 feet of pipe into a project, we have to transmit that information to McGill. They go in and manipulate the model. They call us back and forth to get the data on costs and things like that, and they produce a report. The problem is, one, there's a charge, substantial. And second is, if we then look at it and say, well, what if we pulled this out and moved it over here, we start that process over again. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good model, and we fine-tuned it over the years, and it gives us very good outputs. The problem is that it's not flexible in going and looking at the entire town, not just the water and sewer, which arguably is a big chunk of what we're talking about, but at the entire town. So we have several $1 million worth of debt in the general fund that we need to be aware of and figure out how we want to go forward. So this model that Mr. Cheatwood's going to explain to you, it's been delivered. This is the end of the contract that we contracted with First Tryon for. We will, in the near future, come to you and say, well, this is what we think we need to do. The Watauga River intake, let's take the big one. And we need $20 million, and we need to get started on it. How do you want to fund it? And Mr. Cheatwood can explain to you that there's about 3 options that we have. We can go to BB&T, like we've been doing. We can go to SRF, the state revolving fund, and try and get them to give us the money. USDA is part of that. Or we can do a general obligation bond, which many municipalities do. And Steve and I can handle the BB&T, and we can handle the SRF. We've done that before. I cannot handle recommending to you on a general obligation bond, and from what I understand, that's probably the area that we want to look at the closest. So my level of financial expertise ends there, and I believe I need with the professional assistance to tell us how to go down that path for a general obligation bond. There are other vendors that can do it for us, and First Tryon may not be the vendor we choose to do it with, but there's some bond counsel that needs to be involved. We need to go to the public for a referendum on a general obligation bond. Those are things that I'm not comfortable with, and that was the reason that Mr. Cheatwood was brought on board to give us this model, help us work on our debt, and then soon we need to talk about funding.
So for the, go ahead.
I got a few questions. Did the league recommend this?
Yes.
Yes.
So, okay. Have we hired them? Because I'm under the impression we have not hired them.
No,
Unless,
I did.
okay,
Yeah, I contracted with them and they completed the delivery,
okay.
the model.
Okay, so my question is this, as far as cost, is this an annual cost? Is this
No.
extensions off of models cost, or
No,
how's it?
There is no ongoing cost unless we choose to use First Tryon for additional funding, as I just talked about, deciding how to
Okay.
go forward.
And so what these guys do, they're a vendor, they come in here, they tell us how we can spend our money as far as lending, bonds, who to go to.
Yeah, they can provide, and I may let Mr. Cheatwood
Sure, sure.
help us here, but they can advise us. I didn't hire them to advise us yet. Okay, we hired them to build the model and help us with our debt and to track our projects
Okay,
and decide. And the next piece of the puzzle is then after you decide what we want to do and how we want to do it, we have to figure out how to pay for it. So that will be the next piece, and currently we don't have anyone under retainer or contract to do that.
okay.
The difference is, if I understand you correctly, Chief, the difference is that the last presentation was water only, and First Tryon incorporates the entire town, the model.
Well, those were engineers from Miguel.
Correct.
Yes, that was
Correct.
So they work hand in hand with Miguel, for an example, and then they deliver us a more accurate model.
That water model has been incorporated into this bigger model that we can use for the entire town.
Just for accuracy, right?
Well, yeah, we want it all to be the same numbers,
Exactly.
but we're looking at a much bigger issue on total town debt. If you saw the audit, we have a legal debt limit of $34 million. That includes our water, sewer, and our general obligation.
All three enterprises.
All three
Right.
together.
Okay.
And there's some benefits to, and Mr. Cheatwood hopefully could explain this better than I, but there's some benefits to the general obligation bond because if we go with a water loan, we're pledging our utility funds, our utility billables. If we go with a general obligation bond, it's pledging the good faith and credit of the entire town. So if you so choose in the future to go that route, we need to have a bigger picture of the entire town because that's what we're putting as collateral for the bond.
Well, why don't we allow him to do his presentation,
Sure.
and if there's, anybody has any questions after that, you can ask him, because I think what we're doing is we're rolling into what he's gonna present. So why don't we just listen, and then you can ask the questions.
Yes, sir.
If you will just tell me when to change the page, I'll do it.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, first off, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me up here today. I've had the opportunity to come up and meet with Bob and Steve before, but good to meet you all as well. As Bob laid out, I'm mainly here to talk about capital financial planning, the model we built. This is really a kind of setting the stage discussion for future discussions with you all on board retreats, workshops about your projects and how they impact the town's financials, and also how to go about funding those projects. As Bob said, cash, debt, a mix of those. If it's debt, what type of debt? So all those things is what I'll kind of lay out and set the stage with today. By quick way of background on our firm, just the first couple of slides in your packet. Our firm, First Tryon Advisors, we're based in Charlotte. We have two parts to our firm. We have a sales and trading side. We have salesmen and traders that trade corporate and municipal bonds. And then we have our advisory side, which is the side I'm on. We've got about 15 of us on that side. We serve as financial advisors to towns, cities, counties, utility systems, school districts, colleges, universities across the Carolinas and Georgia is our primary footprint. I spend most of my time in North Carolina and South Carolina, and my focus is on local government. So I'm working with towns, counties, utility systems. We've got a little bit just kind of history of our team and a little bit of bio, and then Bob, on the next page, there's a map, which is getting harder and harder to read, which is a good thing. It means we've got more and more clients there. The next page just gives you a list in very small type, but hopefully you can see it on your page, of some of the clients we work with across the state. We work with issuers in the western part of the state, eastern part of the state, big issuers, small issuers. we really like working with everybody just because it gives us a good feel for what everybody has going on, and good exposure to different types of clients out there. In our role as financial advisor, we sit on your side of the table. We are not a lender. We don't lend money, but we sit on your side of the table. We have a fiduciary obligation to act in your best interest, and so we're not going to put you into something that's self-serving. We're not going to tell you to go one way that does not meet the needs and goals of the town here. Our role as financial advisor, we like to put it in, it's not always this simple, but one of three general buckets. The first is just pre-planning, and this is going to be our focus today, that pre-planning stage. Looking at your capital improvement projects that you have on the horizon, looking at your debt capacity, debt affordability, looking at different financing alternatives that you have at your disposal, all of that, certain strategy to issuing debt, all of those pre-planning services. That's something that's obviously very, very important. We do a lot of that work, probably more of that than anyone else around. And in many cases, that pre-planning work leads to a transaction. So as Bob was talking about, we're doing the pre-planning work now. That may very well lead to you all issuing debt to fund your intake facility down the road. Well, we work on that side of it too. We, again, advise the town, would advise the town on the best structure to issue that debt. For the debt process, do you go and issue that in the public market where you have an offering document and credit ratings? Do you issue it directly to a bank? Do you go to SRF? Do you go to USDA? Looking at all those different options and then essentially implementing the option that's selected. We have a really good working relationship with the local government commission that has to approve all your financings. So work with them really day in and day out. Coordinate meetings, calls. If it's a direct lending situation, in many cases we'll go out. I realize y'all have a good relationship with Truist, but you may go out with a bank RFP and get in a number of other proposals to evaluate as well. If it's a public market type transaction, you got to get credit ratings and everything else. So we've got that transaction piece. And then the last one is just kind of anything that comes up in between transactions that may arise, that ongoing service. If there's certain kind of credit issues that pop up, you've got a question on your outstanding debt, interaction with LGC, we have all that. So the pre-planning, that's what we're talking about here today, and that's of vital importance, particularly when you have a number of different projects on your horizon or potential projects that y'all want to consider. If you all were just looking at a singular project and saying, hey, what's the impact here? That's a little bit easier. You may not need a full-blown model to evaluate that. If you've got a single project, a single financing, pretty straightforward math. But when you have a number of projects out there across multiple different funds, that's where this pre-planning is really important, because what you don't want to do is obviously be singular focused and hey, we've got this one project, let's fund this one project. 6 months later, a year later, you have other projects and you say, I wish I would have planned for those when I was doing this first one, because I may have done something differently. Maybe I would have combined those, maybe I would have waited for that second one. So kind of knowing what you have on the horizon, getting the full view is really important in a situation like this. Going back a couple of years, because our capital planning service has really grown, and or financial planning, what we produce here, 3-4 years ago, you all would say, hey, we've got this list of projects. Can you tell us how we fund them and what the impact is on our financials? So we would come to a setting like this with maybe 2 or 3 different scenarios set. Inevitably, you all would say, hey, the amount's changed. Or what happens if we push this project back 1 year? What if we do it as a different type of bond or fund it with cash? Years ago, we would tell you, hey, let us go back, we'll run that, we'll come back to your next town council meeting and we'll tell you the results. And that process would take a while to kind of go through. So we thought there's got to be a better way to go through that process, help you all prioritize, evaluate, and make decisions in a timely manner. And also really help staff to cycle through that scenario development, if you will, as well. And so we developed what we very unoriginally call our capital planning model. It's an Excel-based model, and it is, I've got some screenshots here, and Bob and Steve have seen it, but it's very interactive, dynamic. So as Bob was describing, you've got on-off buttons, you've got certain inputs, and you can turn things on and off and see automatically what the input is, or output is, excuse me. And so in a setting like this, or if you're at a board retreat or a work session, this is where we do a lot of this work, where we pull the model up live, and we may have a couple of set scenarios, but then it enables us to respond quickly to your questions, the what-if scenarios. And so think of the ability to cycle through 5 or 10 different scenarios in a 30-minute time frame, which previously would take perhaps multiple meetings. And so, Bob, if you go back to page 11, I like this visual because it tells you all what we're putting into the model and what we're focused on in terms of outputs. In terms of inputs, we always start with an entity's existing debt. Y'all have to know what your existing debt is. We have to know what your existing debt is to properly advise you on kind of future debt issues, or what the right debt versus cash mix is. So that's always a starting point. So we've got that dropped into your model. We've broken that down between what's funded out of your general fund, what's funded out of water and sewer, sanitation. It's also really important to know that, because if you have debt rolling off in a given year, that is naturally creating capacity to issue new debt. And so we certainly want to know that, because that comes into play when you're talking about the timing of that new potential debt issuance. Financial performance, both on a historical basis and projected basis. Historically, we've gone into the model, loaded up your past 5 years of audited financial statements. I'm going to email Steve when I get home tonight, have him send me the fiscal 2020s. We load those up as well. So each year that you all have audited statements, we're going to drop those in. We like to have that historical data, because if we're looking at trends, and especially when we're looking at projections, we want to maybe look at history and what's been happening with sales tax. If that's been growing at 3% per year, that gives us good context when we're talking about projecting that sales tax revenue out. And so that historical information is good. The projected information is what's going to be driving our outputs. And so within the model, you'll see a few screenshots and a few slides. We've got the ability to change assumptions on an annual basis. And so sales tax is a really good one to talk about in this environment. Maybe going back to last year, sales tax got hit initially. We think it may stay down in fiscal 21, but then start to go back up. So we have the ability to look at different assumptions for that sales tax growth on an annual basis. And so that's something we have on there projected. The other thing from a projected basis is your fund balance. Obviously, that's one of the main funding sources you have at your disposal. And so we want to know what your fund balance is starting out. If you start to fund certain projects with cash, we want to make sure you don't drop below a certain level. And so we're also looking at, if you go over to the outputs tab, so your financial policies, your targets. What do we not want fund balance to drop down below, for instance? So that financial performance, historical and projected, is another one. Credit profile. This would only come into play if you all decided to issue debt in what I call the public market. That's, again, where you have an offering document, a disclosure document. You go out and sell those bonds to a variety of different investors, not just a single bank. And to do that, you have to get credit ratings. There's 3 main credit rating agencies: Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Fitch. So you have to go and present to them, get a credit rating, and that your credit profile, your fund balance, your debt ratios, things like that go into the credit rating. And so we're able to, and we don't have it in there yet because you don't have an existing credit rating, but if you decide to go the public market path, we would build that into the model. But that credit rating is one of the primary drivers of the interest rate on your bonds. And so it's important to have that in there as well. And then the last thing we typically put in, and it's generally the most important, is whether it's a formal capital improvement plan, informal capital improvement plan, or simply just a wish list of projects. We drop those in, and those are things we're turning on, off, moving forward and back. So we've got those various inputs into the model. The outputs that we're always focused on are, what's the impact on the identified revenue source? Are we talking about tax impact? What's that? If we're talking about water and sewer fund, what's the rate impact or revenue impact there? So that's always the top line kind of output we're focused on. I mentioned fund balance, cash balance, certainly keeping an eye on that. That revenue and expenditure performance. If we see your projected revenues and expenditures, there's an imbalance there, and you start to be project at a operating deficit, we want to be aware of that, and so that's something we're focused on as well. I mentioned financial policies, targets, all of those, fund balance policies, debt ratios. We want to keep an eye on that. And then credit rating impact, I mentioned peer comparison. That's something that we've built into the model over the years where you all can compare your debt ratios to other peers that are out there. And there's a couple of different ways to kind of get that peer set to make sure it's the peers that best fit the town here, but that's important to keep in mind as well. And let me say before I show you some screenshots, the capital planning model, or ours, is really, it's a dynamic interactive model. It's also kind of continually updated. It is not stale. You wouldn't sit it, put it on the shelf and not touch it again. And if we come up with something for another town or city that we're working on, and we say, you know what, that'd be really good to build into Beach Mountain's model, let's drop that in there. And that's where things like peer comps have come from. It's somewhere along the way an entity said, hey, it'd be great if you can show us some comparisons to other peers. And all of a sudden that's just in our models going forward. Same with credit rating impact and things like that. So it's a model that evolves or can evolve over time. And the last thing I'd say, and reiterate what Bob said, it is your model, you own it. I think I've sent it to y'all before. If not, it's always there to be accessed. We are always happy to run as many scenarios as you'd like us to. We're happy to come to board meetings or retreats and run through those scenarios. But we also offer, if you all want to run through it too, if Steve and Bob want to run through it on their own and respond to questions, I think they found, and you'll see here, it's user friendly. It's very clear in terms of what are inputs, what do we turn on and off. But we're always willing to be the keeper of the model and be able to run those different scenarios. So just to show you a couple screenshots, starting on page 12, it may be easier to read in your packet versus on the screen. But within this model, there's multiple tabs. They all really flow up to what we call our main dashboard tab. You all, or an entity, can input specific projects or borrowings on this main dashboard tab. Under column 2 there, they put in the description of the project. Under column 3, what's the amount of the project? Number 4, timing, what fiscal year are we going to issue that or fund that project? Under funding type, this is where you start to get in some of the functionality. There's going to be a drop-down box there that says, how are we funding that? Is that essentially debt or cash? If it's debt, is it a general obligation bond, a water and sewer revenue bond? What form does that take? Under number 6, what fund? What are we going to fund that out of? Is it general fund, water and sewer, sanitation? And you can split it between different funds as well, like you've done with previous debt issuances. From a structure, 7, 8, 9, 10 are all, if they are debt, you can determine, is this a level debt service, so the same payment each and every year? Is that the structure you want? Is it a level principal, meaning your first payment is going to be the highest and it goes down from there? There are certain LGC guidelines around that. Is this, are you going to amortize this debt over a 10-year period, 15, 20? What's the interest rate we want to assume, 3%, 4%? Some of that depends on how far out that project would occur. Generally, the longer out the project is, we're going to put more cushion in that interest rate, just not knowing what rates will do on a long-term basis. So you all have the ability to put in every project on this main dashboard tab. The other way to do it, and this is, again, something that's evolved over time and we've built into a lot of models. If you go to the next page, Bob, when you all have a long list of projects, the dashboard tab gets a little bit messy to put those in. And so what we've built is more from a kind of a horizontal basis, and putting in those projects, it functions almost the same way, with one exception I'll talk about, where you drop in your project under column 4, again, what fund or revenue source, but instead of maybe a singular amount in a singular year, if this is a type of project that's going to have a multi-year spend down, or you're going to do, $50,000 for vehicles and equipment each and every year, think about on that dashboard tab, that can get a little bit messy. If you have the same category, you can do this on a horizontal basis, account for that multi-year spend down schedule, but it all functions the same way. Anything that's turned on as debt in this would really be brought up to our main dashboard tab so we can isolate it. But what you'll find on that dashboard tab and on the left-hand side is the on-off switch. And so if it's in white, it's turned on. That means it's flowing through the model. It's flowing through all the outputs. There's a drop-down box to turn it off. That means it's grayed out. And so in a retreat setting, you all can have all the projects say, hey, let's start with funding every single project on this list. What's the impact to our different ratios? Turn those on. You all may say that's too much. That would require too much of a tax impact or water and sewer rate impact. Let's start to turn off maybe some of those projects that are not a priority and see if we can fit it within the confines of our current revenue streams. So that's the functionality with the on-off with your capital improvement plan. And those are specific projects. That's only, Steve, I think about a third of it. It goes on a number of other. The bulk of yours are in that water and sewer fund. You have a number in your general fund as well. But what we tell our clients is, let's start with everything. Put everything in the mix because we can always turn it off. But it's easier to have it in there potentially. So that's your capital improvement plan input. That's how that functionality works. In terms of the outputs, these next couple of slides will tell you, again, this is, I'm taking screenshots from our model, so if you pulled up the full model, you'd see all this on the main page here. But from a general fund perspective, the main things we're focused on, your unassigned fund balance, total cash, and a percentage of your total general fund expenditures. That's a ratio that's kind of universally tracked. You all tracked it. I heard your auditor mention it. The LGC looks at that. Lenders look at that. Rating agencies. So we want to look at your percentage of unassigned fund balance to total expenditures. And then the other thing we can do within this model is look at a tax impact. Let's say we turn on all of your general fund projects and you see your unassigned fund balance going down, down, down. We know you all can't afford those without some additional revenue. And if that revenue would come in the form of a tax increase, you'll see some yellowy orange input boxes there. You can simply put in, what if we did a 1 cent tax increase in fiscal 2022? What would that do? And so you can turn that on, see what that does to fund balance, see what that does to some of your other ratios, and you can stagger that, 0.5 cent in 2022, another half in 2024. Play around with that to see what the sensitivity is and the additional revenues that would be generated there, and if that gets you up to a level where you can fund your projects comfortably. The ultimate goal of all of this, by the way, is to give you all the ability to look at different scenarios and ultimately come up with a scenario that allows you to fund all the projects you want to fund and stay within your revenue confines. If the marching orders from the board are, we're going to keep taxes as is, then we need to work within those confines. If, for instance, on your water and sewer side with that, upwards of $20 million intake facility project, odds are you're going to have to increase your water and sewer rates. So what sort of impact, and can kind of look at different scenarios there. All of these, we've got some really detailed numbers and charts in the back of our model that we're working on in conjunction with Steve and Bob, getting into the weeds on all that in terms of projections for each and every line item of your revenues and expenses. For purposes of a setting like this, that can get pretty overwhelming if we just have a bunch of numbers on the page. So we love charts, and so these outputs will all focus on charts in terms of, and here's a couple of them with your general fund. We're, again, focused on a year in, year out. Are you adding to fund balance? Are you taking away fund balance? To my earlier point, if we see you just taking from fund balance each and every year, that's a visual that's can be powerful to see in a chart. We can look at your total fund balance on the upper right-hand side there, what that is as a percentage. The lines below it may be your minimum targets, both from a dollar or percentage basis. And so again, quickly and easily, if you turn on a scenario, you fund all your projects, and you see in a given year your unassigned fund balance dropping below the red line, then we've got an issue. We're falling below or projected to fall below your fund balance. And then the last chart on this page is your debt service structure within your general fund. This is actually your current debt service structure. If I turned on any new debt funded out of your general fund, it would stack it on top of there. So, going back to my point about debt rolling off, I would look at this chart within your general fund and say, you've got some capacity within your general fund to layer on new debt starting in fiscal year 2023 because you have some debt rolling off there, which again would help mitigate the impact of whether that's on taxes or anything else that you would fund out of the general fund. On your water and sewer fund, functions the same way. We're looking at a couple of different things. We are looking at your fund balance, or we've got it cash here, your unrestricted cash within your water and sewer fund or your sanitation fund. We do that because we convert your cash into days cash on hand. Again, thinking about lenders and credit rating agencies, they want to know how many days cash on hand do you have in your proprietary funds. Worst case scenario, you stop getting in revenues, how long can your cash carry your expenses, is the extreme scenario there. So there's different targets we can input. For instance, just to highlight this, if you wanted to have at least 6 months days cash on hand in your water and sewer fund, that's 180 days. On a projected basis, if we turn on certain projects and it shows that you fall below your days cash, it's going to red flag. It's going to show a box that says this is a potential problem year. Similarly, debt service coverage, that is your revenues less your expenses divided by your debt service. So how much do your net revenues cover your debt service within your water and sewer fund on an annual basis? You've got to have it at least 1 times. In many cases, you have to have it over 1.2 or even higher. And so again, it works the same way. If it ever falls below a given target, it's going to red flag, which is telling us we need to do something either to reduce revenues, reduce our debt, increase revenues, reduce expenses, reduce debt service to get our ratios to project to where we want them to be. Sanitation fund works the exact same way. We're looking at the same ratios there. Our charts, again, getting back to the easy on the eye visuals as opposed to just the long list of numbers there. These are all the different charts. Your cash balances, your debt service coverage, your existing debt service. That's within the water and sewer fund. There's a few more we built in to the model as well to really help the board look at the different projects you're funding and some of the ratios you all may be interested in. For instance, debt versus cash. In a given year, how much of your capital improvement plan in water and sewer are you funding debt versus cash? That's a good visual to know. Within your, by category within your water and sewer fund, whether it's water mains, sewer mains, wastewater plant, water plant, how much of your CIP is dedicated to each of those project categories. And then from a rate increase standpoint, if we have rate increases projected, what do those look like? All the visuals are easy to see. They update automatically, again, when you change those inputs. So think of when we have this model pulled up, you change one input, it's going to flow through to everything. Sanitation outputs, same exact scenarios there, ratios there. Hard to see this, and Bob, maybe you blow this up a little bit, but within that projected revenues and expenditures, this is a high-level view, but this is per your audited line items for all your revenues and expenditures. Several rows are hidden because we literally have every revenue and expenditure built in there, and we also have given you the ability to look at, as I mentioned, different growth assumptions for each of those line items. I unhid one of the rows, for instance, local option sales tax. I've hidden some of the columns out to the left, but we've got your audited financials going back 5 years. At the point in time, we just had your budgeted fiscal 2020. That's what we'd update with your audited. And then budgeted 21 numbers projected off of those 21 base year. We can look at what happens if sales tax revenues go up by 1% in 2022, then 2% in 2023, back down. So you can play with that on an annual basis for each one of your revenue and expenditure line items. On an expenditure side, a line item where we do a lot of this is potentially on salaries and benefits. If you all are looking at annual cost of living increases in salaries, we want to build that in. Maybe your benefits are growing faster than just the salary increases, so we can play around with those different numbers as well. You all may see, if you, for instance, I'm going to the water and sewer side for a second, if you have a new intake facility, does that come with additional expenses? We've got the flexibility to build in additional expenses kind of outside maybe the traditional line items. So we're trying to think of anything that would come up that you all would say, well, what if this happens? Or have you thought about this? I dare say we've got almost all of that, or hopefully all of that covered here to respond to any questions you have, help that scenario development, all with the goal of trying to get you all comfortable with the funding plan for all of your projects going forward. So that's, the last thing here, a few output charts, and this is not fully developed as of yet, but those peer comparisons. The things that we're looking at on your general fund are your fund balance, as I mentioned, total fund balance, unassigned fund balance, your debt ratios, debt as a percentage of full value, I want to come back to that in 1 second, and then your net debt per capita. Those are different ratios that are out there. We've got access to a really good database. One of the rating agencies, Moody's, has a good database for every entity they rate. They have these metrics. So we can go in and pull those metrics on an annual basis. It's updated annually as they get in new audited information from each entity. The one caveat for you all is there's not a ton of peers out there that are rated by Moody's, just given your population size. And so what we've talked about with Steve and Bob is, honestly, those are the only three in your population range, because we can set different peer comps based on population within North Carolina that have a certain credit rating. So there's a way for us to get our peer set, but only if it falls in the Moody's database. So what we've suggested to Steve and Bob is tell us some of your peers that are out there. We'll go and pull their information, their audited information on our own, and we'll manually drop it in there as opposed to just getting this direct feed from Moody's. But that's something that's out there. Same on the water and sewer side. What this will do is it'll tell you, Beach Mountain, here's where you are today on this particular ratio. What's not shown is, because I don't have anything turned on in this model when I was doing the screenshots yet, is it'll show you here's where you are today from coverage standpoint. Here's where you're projected to be in a given year on a coverage standpoint. Here's how you stack up to other peers across the state on that particular metric. So it's a good way for the board. It's something that we're interested in. I'd imagine y'all would be. How do we stack up? Are our debt ratios too high? And it's a good just kind of additional data point to build into the model, which is why we want to have it in there. So that's a really high-level overview, a lot of screenshots of the model, the way it works. The next step would be to really present you all with specific scenarios. We've got everything loaded up. The model is working, it's there. And so the next step would be to get with Bob and Steve, and we can come, or they can present at your next meeting or whenever's desired retreat. Here are a few scenarios to fund this project. Here are the impacts to your different financial ratios. Odds are y'all are going to have comments to that and say, well, what if we do this instead? And that's where the model really comes into play and helps you look at all that. So that is really all to come. We wanted to introduce the model here. I've come to many settings like this, introduced the model and then pulled it up, and it's a little bit overload to do it all in one, where we're looking through scenarios at the same time. So we thought kind of this two-step process of introducing it. And so when you see these outputs, when you see the model later, you'll at least have been introduced to it ahead of time.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
With your pre-planning and building these models for Beach Mountain, you see anything unique about Beach Mountain versus other projects that you've done in the past?
I don't. I will say entities that have a water and sewer fund, naturally your debt metrics are going to be higher than entities that don't have a water and sewer fund. And so your debt, going back to the question posed to the auditor, what is our debt ratio? So you all looking at your total assessed value to your total debt outstanding, both water and sewer and general fund, your ratio is about 2.4%. But statutorily, that 8% doesn't count your water and sewer related debt. It's looking at your general obligation debt. And so really, there's two ways to look at that. What's my total debt outstanding to assessed value? That is a debt metric. For the LGC's purpose, from a statutory standpoint, y'all are much below that. So you have plenty of capacity for that metric. That doesn't mean you would go up to that. It's actually really rare for a North Carolina entity to get anywhere close to that statutory debt limit, normally because it's just so high and it's focused on general obligation debt. So, but I note that to say water and sewer, especially when you start to look at funding upwards of $20 million plus potentially of debt, your debt metrics are going to look bigger because again, you've got water and sewer and you're looking at a pretty sizable project for the size of your town. So if you start comparing yourself against other peers in your population range, I anticipate y'all are going to look higher than that. But again, that alone is not a reason to say don't do it. It's just another data point you want to have on the list. I would also say your fund balance, and I was listening to the fiscal 2020 amounts in there, and they're higher than what was estimated from a budgetary standpoint that's in the model currently. Very strong fund balance, y'all. From a percentage fund balance, you've historically been in that 40% range on your general fund side of expenditures. I think I heard 70%. Did I hear with the new ones upwards of 70?
Well, that's true, but there was a lot of assigned last year
Okay,
that we unassigned, and
I got you.
so it wasn't really just an operational increase, it was more of a renaming.
Gotcha. Well, even if it went back down to 40, I mean, you're at a very good starting point. It sounds like you're going to be in a better starting point. So you've got a good cash position, which gives you a lot of flexibility when you start looking at how do I fund these projects, cash versus debt. As you would think, if you've got a lower cash position, you're looking probably at funding all projects with debt, or the large majority of them on your general fund side. So you've got some good ability to cash fund those, maintain your balances going forward. And I think what you'll find when looking at scenarios, there's probably not going to be a ton of debt scenarios on your general fund projects, given your good kind of annual results and your good starting fund balance there. On your water and sewer side, again, you've got you're roughly 6 months, or at least you were last year, 6 months, days cash on hand. That's a good balance. If you ask me blindly, what's a good thing, good ratio to target? I'd say 6 months is a good. Anything above that's even better. A bare minimum would be 3 months, but I try to get most of my clients to target that 6 months. So you're at a good starting point there, but you definitely have a sizable capital improvement plan on your water and sewer front. And so that's where, again, looking at increasing your revenue through rate increases is going to be something you have to do if you wanted to fund those projects. And that's something we always want to caveat. We're here to tell you the numbers, the outputs, ultimately your decision whether you want to fund that project, increase rates to do that, push it out a little bit longer. You know, our role is to give you all of the information so you have it at your disposal and make a well-informed decision there.
And that was going to be my next question. So once Bob and Steve start changing the metrics of the model and evaluating, you know, how the numbers are being adjusted, then they provide you with that information, you evaluate it, and then give your opinion on whether it's a good move, bad move, et cetera.
Right. What I mentioned to Bob and Steve initially was, again, the model, they can absolutely run it, play with different scenarios. Where we think we provide some value in that is making sure you don't go too far down a path that maybe we would recommend something different, whether that's a debt versus cash mix, whether it's a type of debt that you're issuing. As I mentioned, we do a ton of work across the state, work with the local government commission, know what they'll allow and what they won't allow. And so that guidance about, hey, have you thought about doing it like this? Or here are your different options for issuing this debt. If you do it this way, here are your constraints. If you do it this way, here are your constraints. Talking about interest rates, we're in the market weekly, so we know where interest rates are. Does it make sense to go straight to a bank, to go to USDA, SRF, state revolving fund loans, or go to the public market? And so that's where, given our experience on the transaction side and working with different issuers, we would provide that advice, recommendations to think about the different options that are out there.
Thank you.
David, have you worked with another town that has successfully done a water intake with one of your models?
I've worked with a number of towns that have utility systems, and so I can know without looking at it that there has been an intake facility in there. I can't tell you, hey, town of so-and-so has done a water intake facility, and I worked on that. Off the top of my head, I can certainly come back to you, but we do a ton of utility system revenue bond deals. We work on those a lot. It's honestly probably 50-50 of what I do, that versus what I'd call the more general fund borrowings, the GEO bonds and installment financings. Those are you've steered me off on or you've made me think of another thing I want to mention after this, answering this question, but we've absolutely worked on ones that have intake facilities that have a laundry list of water and sewer projects.
And how are you and the firm accountable?
In terms of accountable for, again, we have a fiduciary duty to act in your best interest. We're giving you information to do that. Accountable in what? The sense of if your revenues don't...
If your model fails?
Yeah, and so the caveat that we always say with our models, these are projections. There's a lot of us, in every model, there's a lot of assumptions that go into those models, a lot of variables at play, and so the one thing I can absolutely guarantee you is that the specific numbers are not going to work out exactly like that. There's no way. We go on, obviously our experience with the type of debt, the recommendations for funding. In terms of assumptions for growth and everything else, we do rely on staff. You know what your staff knows what sales taxes have been doing in the area, for instance. If you've got customers, water and sewer customers increasing, going away. And so we are not guaranteeing those revenue projections, expenditure projections in any way. So there's, from an accountability standpoint, we certainly take pride in our work, stand by the outputs in our model, but like any model, it's only as good as the assumptions that are in it. So that's where we spend a lot of time making sure we all feel good about the assumptions, both us. Certainly if I'm looking, I keep going back to sales tax because that's an easy one to think about. If I look at your historical sales tax growth and it's at 3%, and you all are saying, let's assume 10% growth going forward, I'm going to raise my hand and say, why are we doing that? So I don't take it blindly, but I also do have to rely on your input on that front. So I don't know if I directly answered your question.
No,
but,
you did.
Yeah.
So
And
David,
then- go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead.
In this particular model, how hard was this? How in-depth did you?
It was in depth because, and what I laid out to Steve and Bob initially is we can get as high level as you want, we can get into the weeds as you want. The into the weeds is where we start to go into your revenue and expenditure subcategories, your line items, and really provides you flexibility to look at any revenue or expenditure category. So the general fund, we gave a lot of that. I will say the water and sewer was pretty in-depth because, one thing that goes into that is, what are the consumption assumptions going forward? And with you all, especially, there is some seasonality to your consumption. We had to kind of dig through a lot of data that Steve and Daniel provided to try to think of a good way from an assumption standpoint going forward on the consumption category. So it got into some detail, which again, happy to show you, and Steve and Bob can show you the model, but it's got a lot of detail in there. So it is not the high level one. I'll say that.
Then Bob, the question's for you. Is this another checkbox or check mark in the box for the county and the state as far as moving on with the intake project? Similar to us doing our wells, doing everything possible.
Probably not as much of a checkbox. This is really what we need to do moving forward to make some more concrete decisions on what are we going to do and how we're going to pay for it.
Okay.
Certainly, if we don't do this, we're flying blind. We're taking a shot in the dark. I don't think it's going to help us at the county level. Certainly is going to help us with the LGC at the state level when we try to fund this project or projects. I think it'll pay dividends there.
Yes, sir. And then the reason I asked them how in-depth this model was, what did this cost?
This was $25,000 for the model and the data input.
But the model is, it appears to be a living and breathing document that it is ongoing. It's constantly working in front of you. So regardless of which direction we choose or what we're doing, we're foreseeing ahead of which direction we need to go. And then your firm will provide guidance along with the model, correct?
Well, the worst thing we could do would be to put it on the shelf. It should be used in every budget session.
This is a live document.
Yeah,
correct?
there's been a lot of work put into it. It has a lot of detail, and so maintaining it, putting in audited information, putting in budget information, at a minimum, bringing it out at retreat and updating it. The worst thing we could do would be throw the money away and set it on the shelf. So regardless if you do whatever you do with the utility, this model should be something that the town uses for a long time in its budgeting and projects.
It seems like it'd be a good return on our investment,
And that's really the clients.
long-term.
The clients that use it the best are exactly what Bob said. They are using that every time a question comes up, hey, let's drop it in the model.
Right.
Each year, your audited financials come out, let's drop it in the model. board retreat. And so that's where you get the most value out of it. If you just use just this kind of retreat session, this budget session, and then didn't touch it again, you haven't gotten as much out of it as you should. And so that's where you do have that one-time upfront cost, but then that's your kind of model going forward.
The model takes the guesswork. It appears the model takes the guesswork out of the dominoes effect. If we do this, for every action, there's going to be a reaction. What's this reaction going to be whenever we do this?
Right.
And with the data that has been put into this program, surely with the resume that you presented, that the data is solid.
Yeah.
Well, I think it stops us from running blind.
Absolutely. I mean, that's
Let's go and borrow $3 million. Yeah, not a problem. B&T will go down to, they'll give us $3 million.
No,
But the fact is, we don't know, where does that go along with everything else we got? So that when you throw it in the model, it instantly pops up and say, well, yeah, $3 million. But maybe that's something we shouldn't do today. Maybe we should wait till 2 years from now.
Well, with the growth and the direction that our town is going, I think it's absolutely necessary that we go this direction.
Yeah.
I mean, we need the guidance.
It's
We need them
a
all.
financial planning tool. And you hit
That's what it is.
yeah, you hit the nail right on the head on we're not flying blind.
It's exactly what it is. It's looking to the future and being prepared how to deal with it.
Is there a summary chart every month we could add this to the agenda, so we stay on top of it and it's not sitting on a shelf?
Well, I think at the budget retreats, I think is a good place to put that.
We will take the financial data that we report to you every month, and that'll be, there'll be peaks and valleys. In other words, when we go through budget retreat and budget preparation, and you have, in the springtime, you're dealing with what are we going to do, it'll be used heavily. And then when we have an audit, like we just did, that'll be put into the model. So we can certainly, I give you a report every month. Some months it'll be updated and inputted a lot, and other months probably not.
Nothing, it'll be nothing.
And just a thought.
But the point is, when we're all gone from the town, someone should be using this model to
Exactly.
project the future of the town and how to decide how to spend our dollars. That's the goal. I think we're going to be using it as long as I'm here. We're going to be using it. We've got a substantial investment in it. So.
Well, it's like anything else. If somebody decides not to use it, it's money thrown away.
Correct.
Absolutely.
But if somebody's smart enough and we've got the model and looking to the future for the town, they should be using it automatically.
Correct.
It's like anything else. I mean, you went out and bought that, for the public works. If they don't put the information in it. So, I mean, these tools are there to be used. If we don't use them.
No, we really need it.
All right. I think
Bob, did you want me to mention anything? You touched on it, but the different kind of types of debt, or you want to say that for later?
Well, it's, this, as I explained in the beginning, I don't know if we need to go into it now, but as we go forward, you're going to have to decide what you want to fund and then ultimately how to fund it. And David's very familiar on the options that we have and what the pros and cons of each one. So I would bring him on board or someone like him to guide us on whether it's going to be, go to the bank, do a general obligation bond. Those, in my mind, those are the two extremes. One's really easy, one's really difficult. But there's benefits to both, and there's issues to both. So, he's available to answer those questions if you've got those.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation,
Great.
your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Greatly
Yeah, thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay, I need update on the board and committee memberships that have expired. On the planning board, we have Gabe Joseph, Craig Wall, their term, they have the 2024. Board of, do I need a approval on each one?
Yeah, you can do them separately.
Or do it separately or do it all one?
Separate.
Okay, I need approval for Gabe Joseph, planning board.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Craig Walsh,
Make a motion?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Board of Adjustments, Fred Frank, that's still December 2024. Fred Frank, on a Board of Adjustment,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Jennifer Lavrak,
Make a motion?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Or second. Aye.
Teresa Berry,
So move.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Judy Elliott,
So moved.
Second.
that's still 2024.
Okay.
The Rec Committee, Fred Poe,
So move.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Carla Paquet,
So move.
Second.
Gloria Angel,
So moved.
Carol Beckman,
So, we've got a second.
second.
Second on Gloria.
All approved?
Aye.
Carol Beckman,
So move.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
For December 2024.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Town manager's report.
Mayor, thank you. Again, I apologize for the length, but you wouldn't believe how many things happen in 30 days' time around here.
Especially these past
I
30
wouldn't
days.
believe anything.
The financial report is in the packet. We spent quite a bit of time on financials today, so if you've got a question on that specifically, Steve and I are here to answer that. I would like to go through a number of things. The COVID-19 update, I was listening to the governor when the meeting started. I didn't catch any changes, so I preface my comments based on what I find out what he said. But basically, the general order's been extended to January 29th with the stay-at-home order, the modified stay-at-home order between 10 and 5. The vaccine is the news of the month. Its availability is becoming more prevalent. I will tell you that our first responders in the fire department have all been vaccinated with their first vaccination, and there were no adverse effects. They're scheduled for their second vaccination in about 2 weeks. The next phase, 1B, it opened yesterday, and that's for people over 75 years of age and essential employees. We've submitted all the town employees and posted links on our website and social media for people to sign up. What should be known is that it's a dynamic process, and the health department is rapidly adjusting to the changes. So what may have been true last week is not necessarily true this week. But we have posted the link. People should sign up. When your group is ready, you should get an email from the health department to come in and get vaccinated. We're encouraging all the employees to be vaccinated and working towards that. Watauga Health Department is contracted with the Boone Drugs 3 locations to help administer vaccine by appointment, so that will be available. And we're in discussion with both Avery and Watauga to host a community vaccination clinic here at Beach Mountain, and that will be, when that is determined, we'll announce that. Great. Project update, Public Works, moving along well. I did walk through it with the mayor last week. We're dried in, we're doing drywall, a lot of finished materials inside, but it's progressing well. The Sledding Hills 1 and 2, heavy use. We've had less than 50% compliance on masks. It's been a difficult thing for our employee to monitor that and educate, and we are making snow whenever possible. The Buckeye Rec Center fire, the loss is going to be right at $50,000. It is insured, and repairs are underway. There's new flooring and carpet being installed, and there'll be some drywall repairs. So we'll complete that soon. I put on your dais at your seat the town's 40th birthday celebration poster was designed by Armando in the TDA. There's a planning group that's up and running. They're very energized. And they've got a number of things. I'm not going to go through them all today, but they have put out a number of rustic 40s around town, and there's going to be an I Spy program where you locate all of these rustic 40s that are out there. And then there's a series of events throughout the year for a year-long celebration. There'll be what they're calling town birthday presents throughout the year, and those will be events monthly that they'll put together to recognize the town's 40th. They're working with the TDA, the chamber, and local businesses to create that celebration, and anyone that's interested in helping out can call Sandy Carr, and her number we can put on our website. Our first annual Christmas parade was a great success. We hope to make it a tradition, and I wanted to thank everybody who participated. I will tell you that I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't think many people would come out to look at a parade on Beach Mountain.
No question.
But boy, did they. So that was really good. Our services planning group has completed their draft report. As I promised you, I will have that for you in writing at the February 9th meeting. That's the group that is looking at continuous occupancy in the town and what that means to the town. So look forward to that. Our budget retreat is January 28th and the 29th. I've secured Mr. Ray as a facilitator. We'll have planning materials for the council before the meeting. We're going to use the same format, unless you want to change it, as we did last year, where we'll go over the projects that were completed. There were a lot. And then we'll go through setting goals, looking at our infrastructure projects, and coming up with a direction for staff.
We'll be in the chambers.
We'll be here, yes, and we'll provide lunch. We'll transmit that live on YouTube, and we'll try to get the Zoom working for that meeting. I had promised you a convenience center 6-month report. We made our changes in July 1st of 2020 by securing this center and putting in the placard system, and we eliminated all construction debris. We updated the solid waste ordinance, and we provided a 90-day grace period for those who said they did not receive the placard in the mail. We had a total of 57 people who took advantage of the affidavit, which was about 2.5% of the total that said they didn't get their placards in the mail. We established a premium cost for non-town residents, and it was 100%. It was 125% of what a town resident pays for, and that's a $370 per year. I don't have the exact number of how many we sold, but there was a good number of those, and those are reoccurring. So finance is going to bill those out-of-town customers July 1st for another $370. You establish a single-use permit at $5, which we sell at Town Hall and Fred's, mostly for the rental users. We've had very good use of those. They seem to be circulating very well. Fred's, unfortunately, is taking the brunt. They're selling the $5 single-use tickets for us, and they're taking the grief, because what happens is a renter is told by their landlord to go to the recycling center to dump off their trash. They get there, they don't have a placard. Our guy tells them to go to Town Hall or Fred's. They go to Fred's because it's usually on a weekend, and then the Fred's employee has to put up with the complaint. So hopefully that'll calm down a little bit, and Fred will continue doing that for us. We've had an unprecedented amount of solid waste due to higher occupancy of the town. We're averaging 3 trips per day to the landfill in Boone. That's up 20%. I've got some information here on where we should go in the future, but that is a substantial finding that we have through our data. For instance, in 2019 we paid $35,000 to Watauga for landfill tipping fees, tonnage, and in 2020 it was $88,000. That's a direct result of the amount of tonnage that we're delivering there. So our recommendations moving forward, we are moving to the new center in the spring when we open the new public works facility, and that is going to come with some challenges. But we are recommending that we continue with the placard system. We believe that we have to have better communications with the residents on the placard system, how they're getting them. Last year, it didn't get approved until June 8th at the last budget meeting, and then we had them printed and mailed the next week. A number of issues that we have in complaints, rightly so, is that the program wasn't communicated widely enough, and a lot of people didn't know about it. We've been putting notices on the utility bill. We'll continue to do that, and we believe that part of that will be solved by mailing next year's placards out earlier in the springtime. I'll know after budget retreat what your desires are, so if we're going to continue with it, we'll mail those out in the April-May timeframe. We're going to change the background color yearly. I showed this to Councilwoman Gagne. This is last week's counterfeit passes that we collected at the recycling center. I'll pass them around. Some do a really good job,
Really good.
and some not too well. But anybody that tells you there's no value in the pass, someone goes to a lot of trouble to counterfeit those.
Yeah.
And our guys pick them up and collect them. So what we want to do to make it easier for our attendant is change the background color.
Unbelievable.
We're going to better track the placard with the account number so that when we get a number of counterfeited placards, we can trace it back to the original owner and let them know how displeased the town is. This is something that we need to talk about probably at the retreat, but it's staff's opinion that we need to encourage more curbside pickup. It's more cost effective to the town. It's better for the rentals, and it's actually better for the long-term or permanent residents. When a person drops off a bag of trash at the convenience center, we have to handle it at least twice, sometimes 3 times. When we pick it up on the street, we take that bag and put it in the back of the truck. It gets compacted. We don't touch that bag again until it arrives at the landfill when we dump the truck. So part of our cost effectiveness is to encourage curbside pickup. And I know council over the years has had discussion about doing away with it, improving it, bare bins, things like that. But our center has reached capacity if it's not over. And we need to do something to not have so much trash brought to the center. If we're going to continue, we're going to come to you in the budget to staff the center with 2 attendants at all times. We'll discuss that at the retreat. But with the new center and the restrictions that are there, it's not feasible to do it with one person. That increases our personnel cost, and as you know, personnel costs, once they go up, they never go down. And so that's not something to be taken lightly. So there's some options there. We're the only one that I know of that run a convenience center 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. Most everybody is doing 5 days, 8 to 12 hours. So if we can encourage curbside pickup, possibly you'll want to reduce the hours of the convenience center, and then we can reduce the labor costs. But we'll need to discuss that. We recommend some enforcement for those who are cheating the system with the counterfeit placards and illegal dumping. We have an ordinance that allows for the illegal dumping. We may want to review the penalty for counterfeiting. And I think this is something, and I'd like your opinion on it. I could do this today. Many people have come to me, and some of you, about homeowner construction debris, a toilet, a vanity. We do take mattresses already, but a dresser, things like that, some 2x4s. Our staff's recommendation is that one Sunday a month, we put out a construction dumpster for that day for homeowner construction debris, and then we just control it so that there's not, we pick Sunday because the contractor isn't going to be delivering, his truckloads of debris. That one decision that we made to remove construction debris, we did it because it was being abused by contractors, solved the construction debris, but it did impact homeowners. And I think you should reconsider that, and my recommendation is we go to one Sunday a month, and we'll pull that dumpster early Monday morning and deliver it to the landfill. So think about that. Sanitation. Well, no, that's convenience center. Let me ask you, that's my 6-month report. Is there any questions, comments on the convenience center?
I've got just a statement that I would like to evaluate having obviously when you go to the convenience center on Saturdays and Sundays, it's kind of like what Beach Mountain Parkways look like for the past, 2 or 3 weeks. It is backed up. And a lot of it, and this is where we need to do some further discussion, evaluation, where all is this trash coming from? Is it coming from a homeowner? Is it coming from a condo association? Where's, a lot of this trash coming from? And I know that a lot of the condo associations here on the mountain have gotten rid of their dumpsters. And I think that we need to evaluate having the condo associations have a dumpster, have a fence around it so the animals can't get in it. And whether, the town empties that dumpster or they contract it out through a private enterprise. Because if we don't address the recycling center now, it's going to, especially in the springtime, when we have a lot of guests returning, it's going to be a significant issue. We need to be proactive with it.
Well, Councilman, the existing ordinance allows for the town to decide commercial property, whether it be a business or a condominium. The decision is with the town on whether dumpsters are required or containers or bins. In recent years past, the town has encouraged, because of bears, as I understand it, has encouraged those dumpsters to go away and those bins to go away, and we've encouraged people to bring their trash to the recycling center. I think that's had an unintended consequence, or it wasn't planned well because we don't have the capacity. So we have the mechanism. It's the issue is, do we have the desire to go back and have those dumpsters put in place? It will not solve the bear problem unless we change the dumpster scenario. And actually, that's the next item I've got on my list. But it doesn't require effort by you other than to tell me to do it, the council. The ordinance exists to require that.
So the ordinance is already in place or in effect, and that decision would be left up to you or left up to the council?
No, it's up to the town manager and the public works director.
Okay.
But I'm going to take my direction from you. You tell me what you want done, and we'll apply that across the town fairly to everybody. But we have the town, put yourself in that business or that taxpayer. Not too many years ago, the towns encouraged people to stop having curbside pickup and get rid of their dumpsters and take it to the recycling center. That was the message the town gave.
Chief, I think you need to explain your idea about the new containers.
Well, well, that's actually the next thing on my list. If you want us to look at that, how about I bring that back to you in a month and tell you what we see, the benefit and the cost.
The problem that I saw with some of the condo associations or folks that had containers where they weren't being maintained. And we had a bear issue. I mean, we still have the bears. The bears haven't gone away. I don't see the bears as often as what I used to because I think we've somewhat contained, our garbage. But some of the condo associations that I'm familiar with, it was a, daily buffet.
You take the resort, the resort, you know, they load up their pickup and bring it to the recycling bin, and they would have to get a giant, you know, container. And then the type of bin, you know, you can't have an open bin, and then can our trucks,
The bins we have currently don't work. And that's what Councilman McCarty is referring to. For us to make this happen, we would have to change to the bear-resistant cubes with a metal top, and it would also allow the business owner or the condo association to lock the sliding door so that the illegal dumping of people walking by and throwing their garbage in my dumpster is reduced. And we have a proposal for that. We can, you know, there's a substantial cost to changing from the cans we have now, is what they call it, to a cube-type dumpster. Plus you have to maintain them. Plus we need equipment to pick it up. We currently can't pick up a cube-type dumpster.
right,
On top of that, the Pinnacle, everybody's aware of the Pinnacle Inn issue, garbage issue. We lose money every month, the town does. The town taxpayers lose money every month because we pay Republic Enterprise Trash to pick up the Pinnacle's 5 cube dumpsters. And the cost to Republic is more than the cost we recoup from the Pinnacle based on the fee schedule for dumpsters. So Republic obviously costs more than we do. I think we need to fix that.
Preferably sooner than later.
Well, what I'd like to do is, I'd like to, as soon as possible, put in cube containers. We can lease those. They're $30 a month with a replacement every 3 years. The issue is the truck. A new truck is $300,000, and it takes about 120 days to get. I can do that. In fact, we're going to propose that in the budget to you. There is an option, and I think I've discussed it with 1 or 2 of you, there's an option to buy a used truck. There's a market of used garbage trucks. And it's approximately a 50% savings. So for $140,000, you can buy a used front-load garbage truck. There's quite a market out there. I don't know how you feel about that. You know, typically, you don't buy used equipment because someone's selling it for a reason. But it's a substantial savings at 50%, and I know, you know, if you wanted to get into the business of front-load pickup, this would be a more cost-effective way to do it.
I think short-term, the 150,000 sounds good, but having experience buying used equipment, I'm not a fan of that. You're going to incur headaches,
Exactly.
and if we're going to
and then they'll crash, and then they'll be down, and then we'll have to figure another way to pick them up.
buy it new, bite the bullet, and or just have, you know, whoever we decide, whether it's the condo associations, businesses, or, you know, whomever, whatever we decide, you know, contract it out through someone like Republic Services or Waste Industries or whomever.
Well, Republic has the franchise in this area.
Yeah, they're garbage, so they don't pick up.
Yeah.
We've contacted them because we have another issue, but they're not interested in additional accounts on Beach Mountain. It's not cost effective for them to service us.
Sounds like Beach Mountain's going to get in the trash business.
But we are in the trash business. I'd like to not be in the trash business, but we are. Okay, how about at the budget retreat, we talk about this more in depth, and if you're willing, I'd like to come back to you in February to make at least a decision so I know how to proceed with this.
These trash trucks, what's the life expectancy of them?
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
They're 10 years, and you can typically buy a 4 or 5-year-old truck for 50%. You hope to get 5 years out of it. I didn't realize there was such a market out there, but there's companies that do nothing but refurbish these things and sell them at you know, what I consider a premium. But I wanted to bring that to you. $300,000 is a lot of money out of our sanitation fund.
Are we due for one?
Pardon me?
When's the next time we're due for a trash truck?
I need one now. We're actually short. And
So
so I'm
either
gonna
way, we're
propose
spending
one in
more.
your I'm gonna propose one in your budget, at 300,000.
What's the price compared to one we would buy right now? The
They're
backloading one?
they're very similar. It's probably 280.
It's just the system.
Yeah, it's probably, it's very
Either way, we're
similar.
gonna spend the money.
Well,
So we'd like the whole.
I just wanted to see if you're interested in a used
Yeah,
truck.
Yeah.
But-
My goal is, and trash is a big deal in this room, but to everyone else, it's not a big deal. They want to throw away their trash easy. And we've got to make it as easy as possible for the businesses and the residents and these condos to throw away the damn trash.
Yeah.
So I think your proposal is probably the best idea. And like you said, we'll talk more about it at the retreat, but that's how I feel about it. Because it's getting out of hand, and now we're not talking about it, but it came up today that, you know, we might restrict hours. We cannot keep making different moves and changes and making it harder for trash. We've got to make it easier.
I agree 100%. There's just a cost
No,
involved
no,
in making it
absolutely.
easier.
And I get that,
Yeah.
and I understand that, but I'm just saying.
Oh, we're growing.
Inside this room, it's very complex, as you explain every month. But to the rest of the world in Beach Mountain, they want to throw away their damn trash.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't realize, Councilman, how important a bag of trash was.
Yeah.
Let me tell you,
Who would have known?
our phone here at Town Hall is
Sure.
well aware of how important a bag of trash is. And not only do I want to make it easy to dispose of, I want to make it cost effective.
Of course.
Right.
And I think having them, now, if you're a resident and you want to deliver it once a week to the, some people enjoy that.
Sure.
That's not a problem. Our biggest problem comes in with the dumpsters or non-dumpsters and the people who are not residents that they're upset because they want to get rid of their trash when they leave the mountain and they can't.
Yes, sir.
To get back to your statement on the piece of used equipment, not all used equipment's bad equipment. And I think that if we do our homework and find someone that's reputable and that has gone through it, and maybe we do pay a little bit more for a piece of used equipment, pay a premium for it, if it's got low miles, and you can tell whether or not it's been taken care of. You can tell whether or not, how often it's been serviced. So there's, I think if we do a little research on our end, whoever's responsible for making this decision, and we find a nice used piece of equipment that will bring value to what we're trying to accomplish here, and then we evaluate a new piece of equipment, and then we evaluate maybe leasing a piece of equipment.
Okay, well, that, maybe I'm sorry, I didn't communicate. We've done that. I mean, that's where we are today. We've gone out, we found used equipment that we believe is in good shape, and that's how we got the price.
Okay?
We've gone out and evaluated new equipment. We have a quote to buy a new truck of the same spec and design. So it's $300,000, $145,000. We've looked at leasing. Leasing is not an option at this particular point because we can't find anybody with that special equipment. So that's been done, and I've got that data. But quite honestly, if the council is not interested in just from a philosophical standpoint of purchasing used major equipment, then we'll move on.
What's the equipment that you found, the used equipment? Who's the manufacturer?
I'm not a garbage guy.
I think it was McNeil's.
I got it right here. It's a McNillis front load body. It's on a Peterbilt 320,
What year is it?
2015.
What kind
And-
of warranty?
I'm sure there isn't.
Exactly.
Probably
There would be, the warranty would be when you drove it off their lot.
Yeah.
You're gonna be paying
It's
for
a
it
used,
either way.
it's a used
Well,
vehicle.
it's not only the engine, you gotta worry about the electronic, the
Exactly.
Hydraulics.
and all that stuff.
The other thing is depending on where the truck comes from, whether it comes from flatland or comes from the hills because of the gear ratio.
Well, and Councilman, I agree. All of that has been checked out by our Public Works guys.
Yes, sir.
Matthew, and I wouldn't even looked at this if he didn't say it was okay.
All right, so we'll
But
leave
it's
that-
fundamental, it's a policy, it's not a really,
We'll leave that for the budget.
Okay.
We'll discuss it at that time.
okay, let's move on to the holiday ski resort traffic issues. I know you're all willing to hear what's going on there. So, unusual quantity of traffic, more vehicles than anyone can remember area-wide. This year, there's been no overflow parking due to COVID. There's been no shuttles due to COVID. We've had less effective traffic control. We've had people parking on road shoulders to the detriment of not only the road, but the safety of the people traveling on the road. Our law enforcement has been overwhelmed. I've met with the chief every day, and every day during the weekend, and we are overwhelmed. We've had blocking of emergency vehicle access to the point where I had to abandon Fire Station 1 and move the equipment elsewhere. That's not acceptable. There's been a lack of COVID regulations compliance. We've been unable to obtain local tow trucks to help with the situation. And we've had very angry visitors and very angry residents. Even past the mayor in the traffic jam, and he wasn't happy. So I want to let you know what we're going to do about it, and these are not going to solve all the problems, but we're going to make an attempt during Martin Luther King weekend to make some changes, and these are already been in place. We're going to get an additional traffic message board down at the base of the mountain where the flashing light is, and we're going to put it there, and the resort is going to tell us, one, when they're sold out, and two, when the overflow parking is going to be operated. Talked with Ryan Costin today. Actually, I talk with him every day. He's been very cooperative, willing to do anything that the town needs to help out. And he's agreed to go to overflow parking and 3 shuttle buses for 3 days this weekend. He's going to comply with COVID by same thing with the school buses blocking off every other seat. And he's going to do something on his website to let people know there's going to be a substantial delay standing in line, but hopefully they'll park the car and won't be on our highway. We brought in additional law enforcement. I'm bringing in additional Beach Mountain Police Department personnel on overtime. We've reached out to the Avery County and Watauga Sheriff, and we've reached out to the Highway Patrol because Beach Mountain Parkway is a state road and they should help us out. And the chief is coordinating that. We've leased the services of a dedicated tow truck and operator to work on the behalf of the town. They're going to be up here. They're not going to be pulling people out of the ditch. They're not going to be putting chains on. When Chief Barnett says, I need these cars towed, they're going to tow them for us. Part of the problem is we threaten people, we're going to tow your car, and then we can't find a tow company that wants to come up to do it. Based on liability and the financial impact, they turned us down. So we're going to bring up Miller Towing with a tow truck and an operator, and they're going to work on behalf of Chief Barnett.
Where would the cars be taken to?
I was going to say, where are you going to take
We're going
it?
to take them to Public Works parking area, and they'll be ticketed with a $50 town ticket, and there'll be a tow fee associated that Miller will get. We can't charge a tow fee. We don't have it in our fee schedule, but we do have a $50 parking, and we're going to ticket the car and try and recoup some of our costs.
And then if the cars do get towed, will there be signage that clearly states this is a no parking zone or tow zone?
No, we're not putting up additional signage. There is signage down there, says no parking on the side of the parkway by Frazier's and over by Poppy's. But they're parking on the right-of-way of town roads, and Chief Barnett says that they can't do that, and he has legal authority to tow it.
Okay.
This is just an addition. We've added additional portable toilets at the visitor center. They have been overwhelmed. It's mostly people coming in to use the bathroom. I'll reserve comment on the aggressiveness and the hatefulness of the visitors that are coming up here. I don't know why, but maybe they've been sitting in line, but the people, our staff at the visitor center is shell-shocked. So we're going to bring some portable toilets and put them out in the parking lot. We've added social media messages that the area is heavily populated. We're getting complaints that COVID regulations aren't being adhered to. So what we've done, it's went out today, we're letting everyone know that Beach Mountain is not empty, it's not wide open spaces, there's a lot of people here, and if you need to make a personal decision, if you want to come to Beach Mountain, you're not going to be by yourself. There's going to be a lot of other people here. I think it's important that we get that message out. I asked the resort to limit parking in the resort to those with advanced tickets. I was told that can't be done. I've relocated emergency vehicles from Fire Station 1 to Fire Station 2, as well as Holland Realty. As I said, we're going to discourage parking on roadways, shoulders, and tow where appropriate, and issue tickets where appropriate. We're going to encourage businesses to monitor parking on private property. We got a lot of complaints that people were parking on private property, and our police department cannot tow a vehicle legally if it's on private property. So the property owner has to initiate that tow or charge them to park there, which one of our businesses is doing that. And we're going to encourage COVID regulations where appropriate. So this weekend is going to be overwhelming. I think with what we put in place, we're going to deal with it as best we can. We're going to try to keep the parkway open. We're not going to allow people, what happens is one car parks illegally, and then within minutes, 10 are parked illegally, and that overwhelms our law enforcement. We can't ever get back. So my direction to Chief Barnett has been, let's stop it at the first car. Don't allow the first illegal park, because then others will be behind there. We're not the only ones experiencing this. Sugar Mountain has got the same problem. Banner Elk. We talked to the town manager today about our sign, because it technically doesn't meet their ordinance. And he said, for emergency, do whatever you need to do. He agrees. We need some help. So I don't know what's causing this, but there are far more vehicles here than the town can handle, and we'll manage that as best we can. Mayor and Council, that's my report, and I thank you for the time.
All right. Town council comments? Aaron?
There's been a lot today on the agenda, but I guess, everybody has noticed that the beach is growing, and regardless of COVID being here or not, it hasn't slowed anybody down. And I think part of the reason that we're seeing the cars and the people and the masses is it's great for the town. It's great for the businesses, and it's wonderful that we're having a great snow and a ski season. But it's just it's a lot. And Bob is right. Chief is right. You drive through Sugar, you see the same thing. You just have to know, and if you live up here full time, you have to know and understand that you're going to have to go with the flow. The sliding hills are packed. It amazes me to know that people are moving cones in front of a fire station so that they can actually park their vehicle there, because the fire truck will not need to get out for any reason at all, or neither will the ambulance. So I commend all of the folks that are working up here for having to use patience and their best manners to deal with, our visitors that have been polite. And I talked to several of the police officers the other day, and they said it's been extremely taxing. And I think the reason that we're seeing it is because people are, even though flights are cheap, are choosing not to go to Park City because they want their kids to see snow. So they'll just do a day drive and get up here, and there you have it. So we're doing the best that we can to accommodate. And if everybody would just breathe, and visitors included, and know that it's crowded and they're coming up on a holiday and we have good snow, they're just going to have a little bit more patience and understanding. And for all of our locals and all of our employees, lots of appreciation. Especially Public Works, they're out there dropping sand and ice and plowing, and we've had a healthy snow season so far, and they haven't slowed down. So I just hope that we can get through the next two big ski weekends calmer. That would be nice.
These are growing pains. They're not necessarily bad. They're just as long as chief and the council and the staff keeps tackling one thing at a time, we won't get too far behind. They're just growing pains. You know, we're in a resort community. It's gonna grow. It's a good thing. Yeah. As far as the staff's doing a great job. I'm up early every morning. They're always doing something before 7 o'clock. You know. 7:30 at the latest. They're salting the roads or plowing. I have noticed DOTs up here a little more often than last year, so good job to Bob or Matthew or Daniel for getting on their butts, because they can be extremely lazy sometimes. So thank you to that. And just don't forget their growing pains. You know, it's a good thing. We'll keep tackling everything that's in front of us. I had one question for Bob. What was the price or the damage to the water tank down there off of
Ashwood?
yes, Ashwood?
I
I was
have-
just curious.
I don't have a total account.
Yeah.
It wasn't cheap.
Yeah, oh, I could tell you. Yeah. I was just curious. And
The repairs are permanent.
was it capacity issue or infrastructure failure on our end?
It was infrastructure failure. It was aged,
Aged.
and it was a single point of failure in our system.
Mhm.
But I will tell you that it's permanently repaired in better condition than it was before it was originally built. Yeah, proper
Okay.
valves have been put in, proper piping, proper connections, proper, I didn't know that a big pipe could move that much, but it did. So you have to put concrete
Sure.
blocking in there to hold it. That's all been done.
Yeah.
We still
Well-
have some repairs for the building to do.
I hope we took pictures, because all this, it's just going to help us with the intake, and it should be on our website.
We've got tons
Not-
of pictures.
Yeah, not that you have time to do that right now, but in April,
No,
instruct somebody to
we've got
do that.
pictures.
Just keep building our case, because ultimately that's the goal here, is the drinkable water, you know. That's it.
Mr. Abernathy?
Well, I concur with what, Jimmy said. The town's going through growing pains, and it's a double-edged sword. From a financial standpoint, I know a lot of folks are reaping the rewards. We know we've identified where the bottlenecks are, and, it's a constant moving target. So try the towing and try having highway patrol up here, try this, try that. If we don't try, fine tuning some of these issues, then we'll become stagnant, and it will be worse of an issue than what we have. But hats off to the town and staff. I think we're making progress. The financial model today, I was impressed with that. To me, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you use a tool of that magnitude? Because the benefits are long-term. Everyone that was involved with that, I commend them. And thanks for, bringing that to council and our community. Thank you.
All right, the only thing I have is I'm concerned about, we do have a COVID issue, and, you see a lot of people without masks. It's like, but I don't know how we got signs everywhere. I mean, they're standing beside the sign that says wear masks, and not wearing masks. So. Other than that, I don't know if we're gonna create an issue with towing. That's the only thing. I know we have to, but we're gonna make more people upset. They're gonna start looking for their cars, pay $300 towing bill maybe.
If we don't have any kind of temporary signs that we could put, like past copies where, and I know exactly what you mean. One pulls in, it's rapid fire, they're right behind the other, and then they'll walk. We don't have anything temporary that would.
We can. The issue is, in discussing it with staff, is where do we start, where do we stop?
Exactly.
They were parking up Village Road
Yeah,
on Saturday.
I know, they're parking everywhere.
I had one in my driveway.
Wow.
And we've had some water line meters damaged by people parking and things like that, so.
I don't know, it's just something we have, I guess we just have to deal with.
Well, hopefully we don't have to tow anybody. If I can get enough law enforcement there to catch them as they pull in and tell them to leave, then you don't have to tow. But when an emergency vehicle is blocked, and they're skiing, I have to do something.
All right, they have, Miller has liability insurance?
He does. He's licensed into the state and has his insurance.
Okay. All right,
Don't forget, Mayor, anywhere in this state, if you park illegally, you're gonna get towed.
yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing, but, again,
I mean, I share your worry.
again, we're a tourist community.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I talked to a couple of police officers the other day about that, and what they told me was, when the person who was skiing found out, they said, oh, don't worry about it, I'll pay that. I'll pay it. When I'm done skiing.
All right, I need a motion to go into closed session on personal matters.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. I'm sorry it's so late. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
Have a good one. Friday and Zoom. Okay.
Forward to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Y'all have a good evening.
I'm sorry, I told you to be earlier. It was.
We're 15 minutes